Should Utah bring back Cam Rising for his 8th season of college football? Sounds crazy, but it's still a possibility. We're breaking down if it's really going to happen on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interact with everyone in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by the host of Locked On Big 12, Drake Toll. And Drake, kind enough to join us in the midst of Big 12 championship week. But Drake got big news. Cam Rising could still be coming back to Utah football. And I'm sure some people listening being like, what are you talking about? Well, Kyle Whittingham did just say at his press conference last week that they were still waiting on a decision from Cam on what he's going to do. Now, they said it'd come a week to 10 days. We're actually approaching that deadline rather quickly. So it sounds like Utah's open to the idea of Cam coming back. Cam seems open to the idea of coming back. Really quick, I'm going to turn over you in a moment. Utah should not want Cam back. Cam should not want to come back, in my opinion. But it's at least something that's being discussed, as crazy as it is.
No, please, no, don't. And it's not from the standpoint of, wow, I really do think Cam Rising would cook the Big 12. But there's a point, the shelf life of a quarterback in the NFL, we talk about a lot. How about the shelf life of a college quarterback? We don't talk about very much. This reminds me of a Charlie Brewer. So you saw Charlie Brewer go to Baylor and take Baylor to an 11-1 Sugar Bowl season where the Bears competed in the Big 12 championship game. And he was nails. He was great. And then at some point, he got old. Injuries caught up to him. He lost his fastball. When we talk about guys who have lost their fastball, Cam Rising has to be in that category because we cannot keep talking hypothetically about a guy, JT, you mentioned, was starting football games while Tom Brady was doing the same. A guy who hadn't played a game since Tom Brady was quarterback when he came out was doing it this year for Utah for the couple of games that he got. There's no more. Like, well, yeah, we saw it a long time ago that he can play quarterback. Is that enough for you to? Here's the problem, JT. Here's the dang problem if you're Utah. This is what fires me up so much is I would have made the case that Utah wouldn't have been a Big 12 championship contender even if Cam Rising was healthy the entire season. You know who pushed back on that? Locked On College Football, Spencer McLaughlin. What he said to me was Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel goes to Oklahoma and beats Texas. Goes to Oregon, Oklahoma gets blown out. On both ends of that, before he was there and right after he was there. Gabriel was a big difference. Maybe Cam Rising was too. But the problem was Utah sold out for Cam Rising. Where did that get the OC, I should say? Fired. Andy Ludwig got fired. You know why? There wasn't a contingency plan. Isaac Wilson was never ready. He wasn't. Could he be a good college quarterback in 2 years? Yes. Could he be an elite college quarterback in 2 years? Yes. But he was thrown into a fire that was completely unnecessary, and at no point did he consistently look confident. And you cannot do that to one of your biggest recruits, one of the biggest recruiting wins you could get in the state of Utah because of the BYU part of this, and you put the kid in such a tough spot that now, if I'm a transfer portal quarterback, I look at Utah and go, well, who's their offensive coordinator? And, they rotated quarterbacks.
I have one right now still.
Yeah, don't
That's
have one.
Problem.
You rotated quarterbacks like I change underwear. Like people are just going one after the other. And if I'm a transfer quarterback, I see that, man. I know that when I go on my visit. And to me, keeping Cam Rising, you're risking once again getting into the middle of next season, game 3 of next season. He goes down and saying, oh, shoot, we don't have a backup plan. Instead, you take the car, you take the money, you take everything you got, and you pour, which Utah has resources, you pour it into a trusted transfer from Wisconsin, Virginia Tech, Florida. I don't care if it's Florida Atlantic. Somebody who has proven themselves in college football and has proven they can stay healthy. Not Cam Rising, who turns 26 in May. He will be 26 and a half when college football season starts. J.D. Pickell of On3 says it. He played a fifth year. Be in college, stay in college as long as you can. At some point, we have to stop wishing. Not from Cam Rising's standpoint. I'm sure he'd love to stay in college for the rest of his life. I would have too. From a standpoint for the University of Utah, for the coaching staff, move on. Let the kid go. Because if you want to win football games and be serious again in football, it starts with changing the guard, having a new era behind center, and it can't be Cam Rising.
Two things. One, real quick, it was reported that Andy Ludwig resigned, but yes, the whole obviously situation there was fishy. Real quick, Drake, what is the best ability in football?
I would say the ability to win. What are you looking for here?
It's good. Availability. I was looking for
availability. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Look, if you're looking at it like this, Cam has missed 22 of Utah's last 25 games. Like,
oh God.
What are you doing from that point? You can't rely on him. And here's the other fact, which is something you heavily hinted at. Let's say Utah brings Cam back, but then they're like, okay, well, we know we can't always bank on Cam's health, but it'd be awesome if he was healthy. Can we get a veteran quarterback? No veteran quarterback's going to come, because on the chance that Cam is healthy, they're going to feel like they're not going to play. And even if it was like, okay, I can beat Cam out, then the slightest struggles from that veteran you bring in, everyone will be like, let's let Cam back. Let's let Cam play, because this fan base flips very quickly. Drake, one thing I will say that is nice for Utah, and I'm curious how you'll feel about this. Look, Kyle Whittingham, I still think there's a really good chance he retires. It's still one of those 50-50 things. If Kyle Whittingham does retire, don't you think that at least helps Utah when Morgan Scalley is going and recruiting these guys, and you get the new offensive coordinator in there? There's enough newness, right? Morgan Scalley wants to do things a little differently. The new offensive coordinator is going to want to do things a little differently. That you can sell a quarterback on, hey, we're not doing this wishy-washy QB room crap. We're going to be one guy moving forward behind him. I got to believe that'll help Utah if they get the right OC and if it is Scalley at the helm for that.
Yeah, man, it's tough. This is a situation where there's so much volatility around the Utah program right now. From, Scalley is the guy at some point. It could be in 3 days. It could be in 2 years. We do not know. And Kyle Whittingham plays his cards pretty close to his chest. He can be a tough guy to predict, man. And that's not always a good thing. Sometimes as a Utah fan or somebody who covers Utah, yourself included, you'd be like, oh, wow, I'm expecting X out of Kyle Whittingham. You get the complete opposite. You're like, oh, shoot, what was that? And for better or worse, Mike Gundy is the same way. We see a lot of head coaches in college football who do things differently. And at some point, from the volatility's got to go away. We need an offensive coordinator. We need to know the future of our head coach. Is the head coach the defensive coordinator who's being appointed? We don't know the answers to those questions. So how do we start talking about the 26-year-old who's playing quarterback, who's throwing to kids who are 19, it's shocking to me that we could be talking about truly a 19-year-old Isaac Wilson in a quarterback room during the offseason watching first-team reps from the 26-year-old Cam Rising. That is a 7-year gap. That is an 18-year-old and an 11-year-old playing college football together. And optics aside, because it's not even an optics game of like, well, who cares? Throw it out the window if Cam helps Utah compete. I just don't think you can trust him to do that. And at this point, to your point of what I would sum it up as volatility, Utah needs something they can bank on, and it's not Cam Rising.
They do. And I think the tough thing, if you bring Cam back, you are alienating a ton of the fan base. They're going to be incredibly frustrated about the direction. And if you do move on to Morgan Scalley and bring Cam back and he gets hurt again, what a bad way to start things off. NIL, how does that affect NIL? If I'm someone who made the investment in Cam Rising, do I want to once again make that investment? Do I want to make that investment in another player? I might just be turned off by Utah at that point too. So there's a lot. I really think the risk way outweighs the reward, especially look, sometimes the veteran quarterbacks work great when they have the injuries that Cam Rising does at this point. They usually don't. So it's a really tough spot that Utah's in, but I do think find your offensive coordinator and move forward with a different quarterback. We appreciate everything that Cam did, but sometimes it's just time.
That's a great point. Is if Cam Rising had gotten hurt and they said, look, it's career ending, he's going to hang it up. This is a valiant, 27 gun salute or whatever it is. He goes off into the sunset. We talk about him as a legendary Utah quarterback and a big what if. We're getting into the range of like a Charlie Brewer who was a Baylor legend, and then you're like, oh shoot, he just fizzled out. He overdid it. He overdid it. And while I know we can all be, oh yeah, heroic, if we all think the right things, I mean, he's still a legend in our book, but everyone's going to be actually thinking, just shoot, man, what a grift. It was a grift. So I think it's time you just salute, say goodbye to Utah, send graphic, tweet graphic, and then remain somewhat of the legend status that Cam Rising still has.
Agreed. And hey, Charlie Brewer, Utah legend too, right? To further your point with everything that happened when he came out to Salt Lake.
Yeah. Yep. Oops.
Yeah. Big oops there for Utah. Drake, you're the man. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Coming up, lots to talk about. Utah's had some misses in the recruiting world. We're breaking down what has gone on and why some of the best in-state players are leaving the state. Coming up next. Hate the team you drafted in season-long fantasy leagues? Boy, do I know I do. But want to stay in the action? Well, introducing Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teams triumphs talent and you can play with your friends and not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategizing with your partner to boost your odds and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the social daily fantasy sports movement at Better Together. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. Better Together, it provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. It's a way to stay connected with friends when you can't watch sports in person, puts you in group chats to test, and lets you prove who is better. You can download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using the promo code Locked On. Download Better Together now and sign up using that promo code Locked On for a chance to play in a contest with me or anyone else from our Locked On network, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together with Better Together.
Excited to be joined by a friend of the show, Kevin Borba, who heads Athtlong Sports' All Utes page. And Kevin, one thing that we have to talk about, though, is the recruiting. Utah lost out on some big recruits, too, and that's something that also we got to discuss, unfortunately. The first one, the most major one, being Bob Mulitalo, defensive end from Lone Peak, class of 2026. This is a top 40 player nationally. He's the second best defensive lineman in his class, second best player in the state of Utah, according to the player ratings at 24/7 Sports, and he's going to Oregon. And this one hurts, but I think what's so tough about recruiting things and just strides like the one going on here, Kevin, is this is just the new norm, right? Like Utah's not going to really be able to compete with Oregon for recruits unless it really comes down to like playing time. Like when you get down to the 3-star guys, is the 3-star going to go to Utah over Oregon? I think sure, but like the best of the best, when they see a path to play at Oregon, with Oregon's NIL in a better position, with Oregon in a better position as a program. I mean, they're undefeated. They're the only Power 4 team that was undefeated in the regular season. They are really well set up for success going forward and moving forward. So this is just, I think it's just unfortunate for Utah, like not as much like, oh, you lost out on a recruit on Oregon. Like that's happened to Utah a lot, but just the fact that like the best Utah, it's hard for them to keep the best players that are in the state right now. And it's just a tough reality, but it is the reality.
Yeah, I think for Utah to keep the best players in the state, and this is I won't say a problem, but it's been an occurrence the past couple of years, right? There's been guys who have been top-ranked players that maybe considered Utah. I know there was an offensive lineman last year, Garcia, I believe his last name was, or Isaiah Garcia, right?
Yeah, he came to Utah, yep.
Yeah, like they had to do a lot of things to get him, right? There was a lot of programs coming after him, and it took an all-out effort. And I think that's going to be the case for all of these top guys in the state of Utah, especially with BYU trending in the right direction, especially with programs like Oregon in such close proximity. Like you have to sort of show these recruits that, hey, staying at Utah, we're going to win games and we're going to compete. And right now Utah is not doing that. And I think that hurts them on the recruiting trail because that's their main selling point outside of proximity to home and tradition is like, hey, we're going to win and you're going to play. Because right now Oregon is offering, we're going to win, you're going to play, and you're going to get paid. And so if you want to combat those things, you have to be winning. And I think that's kind of the hard part and sort of the issues that a lot of programs, not just Utah, right, but a lot of programs around college football are experiencing where it's like, if you can't keep up with the NIL aspect of whatever it is, you have to be able to at least have an advantage in some other aspect, whether that be playing time or winning. And right now, Utah is not winning enough to sort of keep those recruits home.
No, they're not at all right now. And it's unfortunate. And then you get another guy too. Even this happened last week, but Isan Tafa, who's an offensive lineman or just an offensive lineman. I think he's good. It says offensive lineman on 24/7 Sport. He played both sides of the ball though if you wanted to. Corner Canyon High School, a 2025 guy. He's the 4th best player in the state, 182nd nationally, 10th best interior offensive lineman. He's going to Washington. It's one thing to lose to Oregon. Washington still hurts, but it does come down to a similar thing, right? Still Big Ten. Still, and I got to believe NIL comes into play a role here too. Utah was in the Final 3, but they miss out yet again. I mean, I look back on that class a couple years ago where Utah was able to land Hunter Clegg, Smith Snowden, Spencer Fano, because they lost out on Aaron Dunn. We know they lost out on Jerome Miles. Still waiting to see. I think Utah still has a chance at Miles. He's more than likely going to end up at A&M based on the reports, but still has a chance. So I don't know. Maybe this is the days of Utah landing 3 4-star recruits. We knew that would be hard to do in this moving forward, but I think what also really hurts is like when those guys are in your state and you can't bring them to campus. Now, them going to a Big 10 school is a lot better than going to like a BYU, your rival. Like that's where it's like, okay, what's the recruiting problem? What are we doing wrong? But it's just not fair to unfortunately compare Utah to a Big 10 school in recruiting right now. You can't really be mad at losing out to a school of that caliber, and losing 2 4-stars in the state of Utah, though, just when you're trying to be the premier program in your state, obviously still hurts.
Yeah, and if you look at 24/7 Sports' rankings for the top Utah players, you mentioned a couple of them, right? Jerome Miles going to Texas A&M most likely, Aaron Dunn going to USC, Austin Pay going to BYU, Darius, I don't want to mispronounce his last name. Afalava, thank you. Oklahoma, and then it's Cyrus Polu and then Carson Kafusi, both going to Utah. So of the top 10 guys, right, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that are staying in the state of Utah, and 2 of them are going to BYU. And so Utah's got to figure out a way to keep those guys home, because especially at a school like Corner Canyon, who is all of a sudden become a hotbed for some of the top talent in college football, Jackson Dart, Isaac Wilson, Garcia, Jerome Miles, like all these guys, you have to figure out a way to keep these guys in Utah, because those are your best chances to landing a 4-star, a 5-star guy, because obviously some guys just want to stay closer to home. And so Utah has to figure out a way to get into the recruiting mix better. And I think obviously bringing in a guy like Ben Arbuckle, who's younger, like we talked about earlier, a cooler, more modern offense that produces results will help, right? We can't not win games and then expect to bring in top talent all the time, because then those guys don't want to be underdeveloped. Because also, and I don't think we've mentioned this on the show yet, people are negatively recruiting Utah. Like it's easy to negatively recruit Utah right now. It's, hey, Kyle Whittingham's going to retire.
Yeah,
the program is on the decline. They're not. They don't have NIL like other schools do, and they don't have on-field results like they used to. And so it's easy to negative recruit Utah. So Utah has to do their best to sort of flip the script and make it so, hey, we fixed all of these problems. You should come here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, too, like even your rival just got 10 wins, and you're not even bowl eligible. It hurts, really hurts, and it's unfortunate the state that Utah's in right now. Real quick, do a full show on this another day. I want to. Utah, if I'm Utah, and it's going to be really hard to land him, but like I think Utah should, as soon as they get their OC hire down, I think it's still worth a phone call right away to Miller Moss, right? I don't think Utah's going to land Miller Moss, but as soon as he entered the portal, Kevin, my ears perked up.
Yeah, I think I was the same exact way for Miller Moss in terms of Utah, because he's someone who I think has shown he was good enough, right? I think USC they have a lot of issues right now. But if Miller Moss has the weapons around him and a Utah defense to back him up, right? I think that's in a Big 12 conference that's not as deep as the Big 10. I think USC kind of struggled with their Big 10 slate a lot. I think if Miller Moss comes to Utah, I think and say that we'll just assume the defense is as good as it's been in past years.
Yeah.
I think that's automatically a top 4 team at worst in the Big 12.
I absolutely agree with that. When Miller Moss, for the first few weeks, I thought he was going to be a Heisman candidate. He was playing like a guy who was going to be an NFL draft potential type player, and then ends up getting benched. But as you said too, Kevin, there's a lot of things wrong with USC. I'm curious to see if he stays at the SEC and Big 10, or if he does go like, you know what, I can go to a place like Utah, like be really good, have a chance to win the Big 12, get to college football playoff that way. But yeah, and that's the first. There's been other names that have popped up in the portal. I'm like, oh, that'd be a good player. That'd be a good player. But like, to me, Miller Moss is a realistic get for Utah because it's a clear quarterback need. It is going to be tough to get him, but clear quarterback need. Utah's shown the willingness to spend NIL money on quarterbacks like they have with Cam Rising. So that's a guy that I know maybe I don't expect Ohio State to be in love with him, but Utah should be all over him.
Yeah, and I think another name he's probably not going to enter the transfer portal, but another name to look out for, just in case Utah does hire Ben Arbuckle, is Washington State quarterback John Mateer, right? I think he's a dynamic quarterback that could do it with his arms, do it with his legs. I'm not saying he's in the portal, but we've seen it a lot of times in the past where if a play caller leaves, sometimes our quarterback follows suit. And he's someone that I wrote about it, I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago now, when Washington State Washington State's been cooking all year, but he had multiple $1 million NIL offers to leave Washington State before the season was even over. And so say this is a hypothetical, say Utah gets Arbuckle, maybe Mr. Mateer is like, hey, I want to play for Mr. Arbuckle again. And if he's at Utah, it wouldn't hurt.
Now it wouldn't hurt, and that would be a dream combination to just elevate back to the same conference as the place with Utah. So that's what's just so weird about this. They're back in the pack, and the pack's rebuilding. That's craziness. But I would love to see that happen too. One thing I also love seeing, Utah women's basketball getting a monster win, beating Notre Dame on the road. We're talking about what that means for Utah in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is the place to be for all of your sports betting needs because FanDuel has you covered and you get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yes, no more Utah games, but there's still a great slate of college football conference championship weekend is coming up here. Also talking about some of the other sports. How about college basketball's back, NBA, NHL, and the NFL continues to deliver week after week. There's still so much going on. So make sure you guys head over to FanDuel today. Once again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that's at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, now the football's over. We always want to give a little bit of time to talk about some of the other sports at Utah. And Utah women basketball team's got a monster win. How about it only took Gavin Peters, the new head coach, still got, you just whenever you see a coach leave mid-season, it's usually the new interim coach. But no, this is Utah's head coach of the women's program. Get a monster win for this team already. They beat the third best team in the country, Notre Dame, 78-67 in the Cayman Islands Classic. Kennedy McQueen at 15, Gianna Neepkins was 16, Jenna Johnson at 14. Now, that was one of Utah's strengths, right? Yes, you lose a player to Alyssa Peely, but you have four of your five starters have played a lot of minutes together. Jenna Johnson, Kennedy McQueen, Neepkins, Vieira. That's a huge boost. And then you also got a nice game, too, from Madison Wilkie off the bench with 14 there. So, I mean, this is a huge – the Utah's recruiting has still been really good. In the women's front, they added a 5-star recently, got some other 4 stars. Like Utah women's basketball isn't going anywhere, and what a win for this program, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a huge win. I think realistically, this is a kind of win that maybe should get them in the top 25, right? I think you beat the number 3 team. You beat the number 3 team in the country, and I think that deserves a ranking, right? Utah, I think they dropped a couple early ones, right? You lose a close one to Northwestern. It was 71-69. And I feel like they play that game again. I really like Utah's chances. I just don't think at that time they were ready for a battle like that. And then they dropped the first game of the Cayman Island Classic against Mississippi State by 4 points. So their 2 losses are by a combined 6 points. Not bad at all. And then I think you have to really like the identity of this team, right? I think I had a lot of questions about how they would look without Alyssa Peely because I think she was a generational player for Utah on and off the court in terms of her impact, right? She was an all-around superstar on the court, and then like her outreach with her community and culture off the court was also amazing to see. So really impressed with how they've sort of replaced her in a way. Like you can't replace her as a player, person, or whatever, but you can replace her impact. And I feel like they're kind of moneyballing it where it's like, okay, she averaged X amount of points, so we need this amount of points from here, here, and here. And I think they're getting that. And I feel like that's really cool. Also, look at Notre Dame's schedule too. This is a little side note. They've had quite a few tough games. They just beat USC. They played TCU, who's another really good team. Utah, who's a good team. And then their next game is against number 4 Texas. So tough slate for Notre Dame, but really big win for Utah.
Yeah, it's fantastic for Utah because now you beat a team like this, and they're hopefully now you become a Notre Dame fan. Basically, they need to keep winning those games. Then Utah looks great.
Yeah.
The new net rankings dropped. Utah's in the top 5 in the Big 12. They're in the top 35 in the country overall. So really excited about the state of Utah women's basketball. We talk about the men's basketball team more this week, but had to give hats off to Coach Peters and his squad for getting it done in a monster W fashion. Kevin, football may be over, but there is still so much to cover with Utah athletics. Where does everyone need to head over to get the latest?
Yeah, go over to All Utes on X, or formerly known as Twitter. We got you covered on all things football, basketball, transfer portal season, offensive coordinator hires, possible Kyle Whittingham news along the way. So make sure to stay tuned because we will have you covered as we always do.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yep.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Got more news to talk about tomorrow. Recruiting, transfer portal talk. Locked On Utes is your place to be for all Utah football and Utah athletics content during the offseason, which makes you guys continue to hang with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow.